Welcome to Exponential Chats, provided to you by Exponential Ventures. In this week's episode, we'll be talking about the societal challenges posed by deepfakes and whether or not they're likely to come to fruition. My name is Adriano Marques. I am the founder and CEO of Exponential Ventures. And today I have here with me Nathan Martins, Harlei Vicente, and Igor Muniz. Before we start our discussion, let's briefly set the stage here. Deepfakes are digitally fabricated and ultra-realistic forms of media that can deceive a human into thinking that what they see or hear is real. More often than not, deep learning is the machine learning technique used to generate the fake content, thus the name deepfake. This is not something new. Deepfakes has been developed by researchers since the early 90s, but only after the AI boom of 2016 that this area started to see some impressive results. In 2017, researchers published a paper along with a video on YouTube in which they took an audio of one of Barack Obama's addresses and generated a high-quality fake video of the president speaking with accurate lip sync, but in a different scenario and different head gestures. As impressive as this was, you would still hear the original Barack Obama while watching his image. But in 2018, the actor Jordan Peele recorded his own speech imitating Barack Obama and generated a fake video which was almost as convincing as any other video you would have watched of Barack Obama addressing the nation. That's when people began to realize the dangers and challenges of deepfakes. And this technology is not limited to videos only. Some deep learning models can synthesize voice that imitates another person very convincingly. In 2019, the CEO of an energy firm based in the United Kingdom was a victim of a scam in which he received a call ordering him to transfer 220,000 euros to a Hungarian bank account. The callers were presumably using deepfake technology to impersonate the chief executive of the parent company in this call. On top of that, it is now also possible to generate still images of people that doesn't even exist. We call them sock puppets, and these ultra-realistic images of people that never existed are used by robots in various social networks. Some of them are generated by the thousands, and their sole goal is to carry out disinformation campaigns. Previously, we were wondering if the person we're chatting with is really the person whose image we see in our profile. But soon we'll need to start wondering whether we're talking to a real person and not a robot. And all of that in combination with the growing societal division and the disinformation campaigns being conducted by interest groups are causing a lot of concern on what needs to be done in order to avoid the chaos. Lots of intellectuals, politicians, and activists are working to fight the evolution of deepfakes and have expressed their vision of the impending doom. But we can't help but wonder whether this is a real concern, and if it is, what are the actual challenges involved in dealing with deepfakes? And that is the backdrop of our discussion today. Is the world going to be deceived by deepfakes? So Harlei, what do you think would be the worst case scenario for deepfakes and the impacts that it could have in our society?
Well, hello everyone. I truly believe that given the technology and how things are going and how fast it's been evolving, I believe that it will reach the point where we're not fully sure of whether or not a video of someone we know, we live with, is actually recorded by that person or not. And once that happens, we will be forced to develop ways to identify and actually know whether or not that came from that person. And if we don't, we'll live in a world where we don't know if what we're seeing is true anymore. I honestly believe that's coming, and it won't take very long, in my opinion.
Okay. What do you think, Igor?
Hello, everyone. So for me, it would be the scenario where it would not be possible to distinguish what is fake or not. And also that tools for creating deep fakes would be so common and easily accessible that anyone could use it. In that case, we couldn't trust any digital material.
Nathan, do you have anything to add to that?
I would look at this from two perspectives, I guess. First, from a personal one, and a second from like a public figure sort of way. Trusting what people say about someone who's public is kind of hard because you can never know if that's true or not, because you're not the person. You don't know them personally. You don't know anything. So that's going to be very difficult to navigate a future like that. And the other one is personal. So if I own my data and I have my pictures, my videos, if I'm not the only one who can view those, a malicious actor, a third party, a government, anyone can take those images and use them to generate deep fakes against me. If I'm considered like an enemy of the state or anything. So there's those 2 points, I guess. I wanted to know what you guys' opinion is towards that. So would something like that happen, do you guys think, with our current technology?
Well, I think, first of all, to generate decent quality fake videos, deep fakes, you need a lot of data to train the AI. So because of that, training AI, making deep fakes of people that are famous and have thousands of hours of audio and video freely available is something that's much easier to do. And even for those type of people, the AI, the deep fakes generated are not 100% perfect. So this means that people that are not public are going to be protected for a little longer, but there will come a time where you won't need much data to train, I believe. And what this means is that for now, non-public people are safer, but that shouldn't last for very long.
Well, yes and no, right? So non-public people meaning regular citizen, but then again, when you're faking something from a politician or to as part of a disinformation campaign, then we citizens are the one being harmed, correct? We're not being targeted directly in that nobody's generating a deep fake that portrays us speaking something that we never would, or looking in ways that we never would allow ourselves to look in a video. But it would nonetheless harm us because we wouldn't have the ability to understand what's real, what's not, and that would impair our decision making. And I guess that's what you meant, correct? Harley, I think you're muted.
Yes, that is true. I was actually focusing. I didn't think of the terms that you're proposing. You can actually be harmed and still not be the target of the actual deepfake. So in that sense, yes. But my question is, let's say, for example, nowadays, when many people get their news from WhatsApp. They will literally read a post someone sent them. Usually they send like large texts that are spreading misinformation are distributed, and it's commonplace. A lot of people that I see will read that and say, "Well, that maybe this might be true," or some people just straight up believe it. And as of now, that kind of misinformation is already spread. And what scares me is how much more impactful something that has actual video and audio, how much more impactful that's going to be when compared to the already happening situation with simple text messages.
Yeah, we know that we've been reading fake news, and we've been seeing the effects that this is causing in our society. And this is not only about elections. It's always also about the division that is causing in the inter-election periods. So it's deepening the gap between both sides of the aisle. It's making people feel more apart than ever. So there are consequences. There are long-term consequences to those deep fake news. And now we would be adding deep fakes to them. So something that you would rule out as fake because you don't have visual proof, now you would have some sort of visual proof. So it's increasing your trust and your belief in fake news. So that would be, I think, the immediate consequence of using deepfakes in a political sense. It would strengthen the effects of fake news that we're already seeing on all the time through WhatsApp, through Telegram, even through media sites that we think are sharing real news, but they are just part of that bigger disinformation strategy. I think that at the end of the day, my biggest concern is whether this is going to be like all of the other kinds of frauds that we have or not, right? We've been learning to fact check news. We've been learning to pay more attention to news recently. And I might be wrong. I don't have any stats, but everyone that I know now know more on average about politics and about what's happening in the world than they used to 10 years ago. And part of that is WhatsApp, part of that is Facebook, is Twitter, and our ability to consume news in a much, much easier way, and a cheap way. Before you would need to have a TV at home. You would need to have a subscription to a newspaper or magazine. And outside of that, you just didn't have the ability to learn about the news. But now everybody has a cell phone. Most people have an account on Telegram, Facebook, Twitter, or WhatsApp, and they have friends that share news. So it has become easier and easier to share the news. Now, this causes some other effects, and we can discuss about those too, but there are advantages to the spread of information that we're seeing right now. It's not all fake news. And, we're learning to detect what is and what is not by fact checking, by checking multiple sources, diverse sources, by just being skeptical about what we read until we receive confirmation that is deemed more authentic or secure. Not everybody's doing that, granted, but I think that we're learning with being burned and believing in Pizzagates and all of those crazy conspiracy theories that come and are distributed through these fake networks.
Oh, I have something to add to that. In general, people are starting to learn that any information that you receive, that you get through WhatsApp, Facebook, is not necessarily true. That people are starting to learn that. But from my personal experience, I see a lot of people from the last generation, our parents and aunts and people like that, they seem to have a hard time understanding why someone would go and generate fake information. Okay, it's a common topic for the younger part of my family. We discuss amongst ourselves how we have to keep explaining to elder people that just because they saw something on WhatsApp, that's still not necessarily true. What concerns me a little bit is because that's happening with just text messages, and I think it would take at least one more generation, let's say, or a couple more, for us to fully understand and fully block, just like we block spam email. Mostly people just understand that, oh, here you get SMS saying you've earned a car and a prize. You just got to pay $100 to get it. Most people already are onto that already. Not everyone, otherwise it wouldn't happen. But I think we're in the middle of this transition, and before we're fully ready for this current generation of attacks, this new one is coming onto us. And I think that's gonna just make it a little harder.
Right. And I think that we're all in agreement here that there are real consequences to deepfakes, especially if they become sufficiently cheap. They are of significant consequence, and they are used in disinformation campaigns. Is that correct?
100%.
Yes.
What about positive uses of deepfakes? Can you guys think of any?
Well, go ahead, Nick.
I saw a really interesting one. So I was surfing the internet the other day, and I think it was on Reddit. This guy posted asking for help. He wasn't a computer scientist. He wasn't a programmer. He wasn't nothing. And he was like, can someone please help me? My brother has throat cancer, and he's going to lose his voice in 3 to 6 months, and I need some way to synthesize his voice. So a lot of people helped him out and pointed him to deepfakes, not deepfakes, but like the same technology, but used it to generate his voice so that he can keep on talking, he can keep on listening, and not have the mechanical Stephen Hawking voice. I thought that was really
I always
cool.
thought that was Stephen Hawking's voice. I'm joking. That is definitely a positive use. What do you have there, Harlei?
They generated his voice, and he uses that to speak?
Yeah,
Oh my, that's amazing.
he uses that as he types it out and then it comes out as his
Oh my
voice.
God, that's great. That's amazing. That's actually probably the one of the best examples we're gonna come up with here, because that's very that's just a great thing to do. Another example that I have, people, in movies, oftentimes this happens. However, the difference is that in movies it's usually 3D generated. It's more of a CGI type thing and not necessarily a deep fake. I'm pretty sure they don't go that way. Maybe, but I believe that could possibly help uh, from here on out to make it so that it's done easier in other movies and done better. So that's one of the ways as well. Also, just one more, Adriano, that I
Yeah, go
remember.
ahead.
It's actually used very frequently, in most notably for comic effect. They'll replace people that completely different people to make a funny sketch, and it's usually okay. It's lighthearted. The people who are involved, I'm not sure in all cases, but oftentimes they're like, it's okay, it's fine. Oftentimes they participate in preparing the video, and I can't think of one off the top of my head, but usually, oftentimes it's done for a comic effect. So that's also nothing wrong with that as well.
Yeah, for entertainment is definitely going to be the industry that benefits the most of deepfakes. We've seen Fast and Furious with the passing away of Paul Walker. Seen the same with Star Wars with the passing away of Carrie Fisher, and we're going to continue to see that.
They have the virtual concerts, right? Where they take the artists and then they put
Right.
them. Michael Jackson had one. I think Jimi Hendrix also had one.
Right. Now, granted, all of those, like Harley said, may or may not have used deepfake, but in the pursuit of making the generation of those images, fake images, we're just making it easier to generate. And likelihood is that deep neural networks are going to be the technology preferred to generate that kind of result. Therefore, I mean, why would I spend weeks in 3D modeling someone's face when I can just easily run a model that, with a couple of pictures of that face, I can just plot it perfectly on top of another actor's face. So it's a lot easier, a lot cheaper, a lot faster. Also, when it comes to voice synthesis, most likely you're using a deep neural network. So even though there are some instances that we've seen that do not use deep learning, the trend is that they're going to start using soon. That's what I believe, just because of the access and how cheap it is. There are definitely many good uses for deep fakes. You can entertain with movies. You can entertain with cartoons. You can entertain by just having someone that you know saying something that is not typical of that person, and that is not necessarily disinformation. That is comedy, and we see that in comedy all the time. We see depictions of celebrities, politicians saying something that is unlike them, and we laugh at that. We know how extreme some views are, and when we see that in a comedy setting, that is fun, and it doesn't harm anyone, and it's perfectly good use of free speech.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting point here, because deepfake is just an application of such technologies as deep learning, GANs networks, and other things. And for those technologies, we have much more applications that are just not generate deep news or deep images. So the future is promising for this area.
Oh, I want to bring up something. Recently I've seen that there are neural networks that you can train with music from famous musicians, and that neural network will learn to generate music that's technically correct. It'll sound properly, has decent melody, and it sounds good generally. And on top of all that, it has the style of that musician. Is this do you consider that it's a similar technology, or using AI to generate texts that sound like someone writing? Would that be similar? Do you consider that to be something similar?
I do. And, that is actually a very good use of deep learning for imitating. I wouldn't call it a fake. I would call an imitation. And just because recently the fake has been given a very poor meaning. When we talk about fake, we understand ill intent, and I think that imitating doesn't necessarily. So if I miss Michael Jackson and I want to see musics that are more like, listen to musics that are more like his style, then I could use this neural network to generate songs that I think would remind me of him, and that is not of ill intent. It's for entertainment purposes.
Well, this question, I want to see the opinion that you guys have about this. It's a bit of a philosophical question in a sense. Let's assume we take an AI and train it with thousands and millions of lines of text by an author. Let's say, for example, Stephen King. All right, he's got a million books out there. And you train that AI with very, very powerful computers, and you get a very decent result. If this AI writes a book, let's assume it managed to write a book that has context that actually tells a story that's cohesive. That was generated by an AI, a computer that has nothing that belongs to Stephen King anymore. It was trained on top of that. Does that AI, does it belong to Stephen King, or does Stephen King own anything to do with the book that was generated?
I think it's just fan fiction.
My answer is no, and I want to hear what you guys think about this.
It's just fan fiction, at least from my point of view, because like fans will take work and write similar to the author. So if you take a look at Harry Potter fan fiction or Stephen King fan fiction, it'll look similar to what he's doing. He doesn't have any ownership over that as well. It's kind of like a derived work, in my opinion.
But okay, get this. Let me add something.
But here's the thing. If you check out Twitch, there's I forgot his name. I think it's ML Ollie. He's writing a book. He's an English major, I think. He's writing a book using, I think it's GPT-3 or GPT-2. But he starts off the prompts the AI generates, and then he keeps curating through them until he finds a piece that matches what he's looking for. And then he's writing an entire book live on Twitch. Is it his book?
That's amazing. No, but get this. Let me give you an example. Let's see how you reply to this one. Let's assume that this AI was trained enough to the point that it wrote a book, right? And what you do is you take that book and you have people that read Stephen King before, myself included, read the book. If the fans of Stephen King can't tell the difference anymore, is it still not Stephen King in the sense? Is it what does it take for you to consider it to be the same thing? If even the people, if his family reads the book and think, oh, that's it, that's Stephen King right there, for sure. Is it not him?
Nope.
Do you believe that as a human I could read all of Stephen King's book and write pieces that sound like him?
Probably could, if you know how to write.
Yeah.
The crime really is in writing a book that looks like Stephen King and claim that it was written by Stephen King. Now, this is a claim that would be fake, regardless of whether or not that would be a crime, regardless of whether or not you're writing using AI. So I think that's the only harm that can be caused is if you're trying to get past as if you are that person. But if you're just generating content that actually, to me, sounds more like a compliment. It's more like tipping your hat for that author. You're a fan, you like his style, you'd like to see more work coming from him. And like Nathan said, this is more like fan fiction than anything else.
Well, what if the book is actually really good and it's sold and it makes profit, and it in such a way that the author is not making any money from it?
Oust the author. Well, then more power to the person who generated this AI, because it's really impressive. I think it's exactly the way that the developer who created the model should be rewarded, which is with success. If the quality of his model is such, then definitely he should be a bestseller.
I think what you're kind of asking is a little bit like fair use. So how much of it do you owe to the author and how much is yours? So if like you can clearly detect plagiarism or things that were copied from the author, then no, that's not fair use. But if you're just borrowing his writing style or his themes or his mannerisms, it's completely fine. You're just making a derived piece of work and you deserve all the credit for it. He was just your inspiration.
Fair enough. That all makes sense, but I believe it'll reach a point where people are going to start to protect. Okay, let's say his books are public and not public. You can buy it, and once you buy the book, you can read it as much as you like. I think there will be a point in time where whether or not you can use that content to train an AI will start to be something that people are going to start creating laws around it. Like, oh, you're not supposed to use any of my work to train an AI. Even if people still do it, I think it's going to be part of see, like when CDs were created back in the day, you can listen to the music and that was it. You bought the music, you could listen to it. Once CDs were created.
Have you heard of Rule 34?
No.
It's basically like if it exists, there's a porn version of it on the internet. So if you create anything in the world, somebody's gonna come in, create a parody of it, and you can't do anything about it. You know, it's like derived work. You can't set up a law saying like, here, I made this play. You can't make a parody out of it, or you can't make a porno out of it, or whatever. We can't do that today with those kinds of things. I don't think we'll be able to do that with AI either, you know?
It won't work, but I believe that copyright laws are going to be updated so that they include saying you may not train AI with this content. I believe that's going to happen at some point. Because in a sense, for all purposes, you are getting benefit from that, in a sense, I believe.
So you think like a DRM, so you'll not own the media? Because if I buy your book, if you write a book and I buy it, it's mine. Like, unless I'm replicating and selling it, I can do whatever I want to it. I can like buy it, burn it, rip it up, do whatever I want with it, including train an AI. It's mine because I bought it. But like if I'm watching something on Netflix, that's not mine. I can't do anything with that. Like I can't extract Netflix's movies and train an AI on that because of the DRM. If I do that, I'm breaking the DRM and I'm violating their policy, you know?
Well, so that's a licensing issue, right?
Yeah.
So I could sell you a book and tell you that the license is such that you cannot copy. But then you would have to agree to that license before you purchase the book and abide by the licensing, which is uncommon. It's uncommon. But when you subscribe to Netflix, then you have to abide by their licensing rules, which means that you cannot do unfair use of the images. You cannot retain a copy unless it's through their system and used only through their system. You cannot do derivative work using the content. You could do, I guess, derivative work if it's just kind of like a fan fiction. Although I've seen there was this bar, I can't remember the place. It was doing a theme around Stranger Things, and Netflix sent a nice cease and desist letter. So I guess if you're using the name of one of their pieces, you're again infringing on the rights of use of that name. There is this comment from Camilla. Camilla said, and by the way, this is our Camilla from Exponential Ventures. She's saying, bringing this to a illustrator perspective, I can draw exactly like Homero Brito's style because it's easy. However, if I start to draw in his style, people will say you're copying Romero. And there are consequences like that too. If you're writing books as if you're Shakespeare, you might just get this reaction that you're just a copycat. You're not really Shakespeare, and you're not worthy of the recognition that Shakespeare earned. So there is that too. There is this perception of the creator and the respect of the creator, and the lack of originality. You're not creating something that is so good that competes with Shakespeare in its own style, in its own league. You're not as good. You have to copy in order to get close to him. That's true.
That's something that a YouTuber in our area actually did recently. Like the guy Siraj, I don't know if you guys have seen his videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
But he was recently flagged for doing this. Like he was taking papers that other people wrote, changing out a couple of words, and being like, hey, I wrote this, but he didn't. It was clearly plagiarism.
Yeah. So what do you guys think? Is this something that we're going to need to do something about? Is it something that can be solved on its own? What do you guys see as the future for deepfakes, and where the concern should be from authorities, from people when it comes to deepfakes?
Well, I think that in general, you can't really putting laws in technology overall is something that's very hard to do because of its very nature. Nowadays, if a person has ill intent, they can hack something, they can steal something, and do it in a way that they're virtually untraceable. So furthermore, if you putting blocks on training a robot to do something is even more abstract than that. So I think it's an attempt. Some things make sense for there to be laws about it, but in general, it won't really achieve much, I believe. But I think people will feel better if they know that there are laws put in place to kind of prevent abuse in a sense. So I think it's important that there are laws and that people know what it is, what's going on. But I'm not sure how much good it will do.
Fair point. I think my opinion, in a sense, is that I don't think people will have incentive to do this, like regular people. This is sort of like in a sense, like what has AI actually brought to my sister or to my parents who don't actually use anything? They only see like the benefits of it in products. So like if we have deepfake technology as a filter to change your face or stuff like that, they'll think it's funny, they'll think it's a cool gimmick, but they won't do anything with it. Like I don't see regular people taking their time out of their day to do stuff with this, you know? So the only people that will actually use and abuse this will be people with intent. And I think as far as technology goes, that'll just keep on going. That'll never change. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't see this hitting the general population as much, you know.
But here's an example. Right now, generating a deepfake that to cause actual harm, it takes money, it takes expertise, or knowing someone who has that. Collecting data, sending it to the person, say, hey, I would like for you to make a fake video about this person. And maybe the person's trying to get someone else to give them money or something, that they're trying to impersonate someone. And they'll collect all the audio, all the video, and have someone that's professional do it, and they'll wait the 2 weeks that it may take. Let's say that nowadays that's what it takes. But I think within a couple years, and this is just a random estimate, but I think within a couple, like 10 years, maybe 50, maybe it's just a few, there will be a point in time where all you have to do is put the person's name on the app, give it a couple videos, and by the end of the day, you have a fake video doing that work. Once it gets to that point, your argument of it takes too much time won't be so valid anymore, because it just takes the press of a button for you to do that.
So we already have something like that. It's not at like 80% or 90% where it could actually trick someone, but we're already at like 60%. So there are a couple of websites that you can go into, like put in an actor's name or something like that, and it'll generate something like right now for you. So I don't think your estimate might be too long. I think we're looking at a 3 to 5 year scenario where that technology is available to everyone. But I don't think most people will actually be interested in that, you know?
I believe it's much sooner than that. But I agree with Nathan, is that, you know, your incentives to pursue that kind of thing are not as great as one would anticipate. So you're either doing that, if you're a regular folk, you're either doing that for entertainment, or you're doing that out of curiosity. And none of those are likely to cause any harm. The cases where it causes harm, then the person, even though we might not have laws for that, that person is going to face consequences if that person is caught. And if you generated something in one of those platforms, then chances are that it has left fingerprints that can trace you back to that platform, then therefore can trace back to you and find the person who generated the video. There are real consequences if a person decides to create a deep fake of the president, or create a deep fake of a celebrity and pose that person in a situation that that person would not approve of, and that would cause real consequences to that person, such as placing the burden on that person to prove that that person was not the person in the video, or saying that, and cause that person to lose contracts, cause that person to lose an election. And
Here's a curious case.
if you're traced back to the origin of that video, then you're going to face real world consequences. People are not going to employ you anymore. They might cancel you. Now we have this cancel culture going on, and you might want to stay away of that.
Here's a real funny one. I don't think that you mentioned. Think about, like, from the financial market. If somebody creates a deep fake which impacts the financial market, and somebody's already prepared for that, and they gain, like, in a day, they'll make like $300,000 because of this video. By the time that people find out who it actually was, that person's already gone. They deleted everything. They bought an island. They're no longer around.
But that's a financial crime that people can cause by making fake announcements and using confidential information for their own profit. There are laws that are going to be they already exist that would be used to prosecute that person.
Well,
go ahead.
I have something to add about that. So let's say the financial market, if you put out news about, let's say, for example, a government changed their interest rates or something along those lines, any small information can cause huge spikes in price. You don't need deep fake to do that. You can just make a fake site, do something to it in a sense that you get people to believe it's the real one. You can do that over a couple months, and then once you think you can strike, it'll be a good moment, you can just push some fake information there, advertise it on Instagram or anything, and you can get that out there easily without even spending much money. And that doesn't take deep fake at all. And you can even do that. You can do, if you're smart about it, the person would be able to do this and not be traced. You can easily set up a scenario where they're not tracked. There won't be, people won't know who it was. So this issue is not particular to deepfakes. So in a sense, it's not caused by it.
Right. And I think that in most instances, we're going to be talking about issues, challenges that deepfake pose that are not new. Those are things that existed before. So putting words in someone else's mouth is something that exists since when we discovered how to lie. But then the form is different. Now it's you seeing that person saying the lie, saying what that person would never say. And that is what's concerning. It's just a boost, an improvement in the capacity of deceiving humans that deepfake can bring to the table. It's not new.
Like my point was, like, this can be used in a fast strike kind of scenario. So like the financial market will be impacted in a day. That's when you make your strike and you go away. If it's like a political thing, like you, one day before the election, you release a video. And then by the time people actually figure out that it's a lie, that it's been proven, that you trace it back to the font, the harm's been done. You can't redo what happened. That's where I'm afraid of it.
And I think that's gonna be where the issues are gonna start. And the problem with, for example, this kind of leads us into the topics of making laws about it. Let's assume, for example, that if a politician gains any benefit from a deepfake, you go and pursue him, assuming it was him who did it. That opens up the opportunity for the opposition to fake a video that would help his enemy, so that it looks like it was him who did it. And then he could get in trouble for that as well. So he gets to a point where you don't even know who's at fault here.
So that's a deep double-crossing fake.
Yeah, and that's easy to do. You can do something that will benefit your enemy, but not to much of a great extent. You won't make him win the election, but you get him ahead by a couple points. But then you go, hey, he's using fake videos. You can literally fabricate evidence in that way. And if people jump on that and say, "Hey, see, this is being harmful. We got to do something about this. This guy cannot win. This is not right." And the guy doesn't know anything about that. And next thing you know, you make him lose, and then you win. And yeah, so that's very complicated. Like identifying and tracking all of this, I don't know. It seems very difficult.
So it would have been like Russia had actually helped Hillary Clinton, and then a couple weeks later come out and say, "Hey, we did this," and then now everybody would say, "Whoa, okay," and they further saying, "Yeah, Hillary asked us to do that. We did that because we loved her," and now you have dire consequences because the burden of proof would lie on her to prove that she had nothing to do with that effort. It makes sense.
It's it's a very complex topic. That's why technology is in such a different league. For example, daily things. For example, for you to kill someone, you have to physically be there. You have to fit. There's cameras everywhere. You have to say something. You have a motive, whether it's financial or anything else. But when it comes to technology, things that just change entirely, in a sense. So that's why I don't think it'll be very easy to people. People are going to try to, but I don't think it'll be very easy.
You mentioned a point about laws. I want to make like another point that I think is important. Like one of the cornerstones of working democracy, I guess, would be journalism, because journalism helps keep the politicians in check, keep the public informed. And we are living, especially in the last 5 to 10 years, in a world where politicians are constantly discrediting journalists and journalism as a whole. We're seeing this whole like grassroots campaigns where especially right-wing politicians will make videos, at least here in Brazil, of them on their phone and share that and say that that has more validity than what the newspaper is saying. So I wanted to know what you guys' opinion is in regards to that. Like, how can journalism in a world of deepfakes make a comeback, kind of get the trust back?
Okay. Well, yeah, that makes sense, because back in the day, you had the newspaper. You had to physically buy it and read it. And then a little bit after, you had TV. You'd watch TV and everything that here in Brazil, this is still a thing for the older generation. People just watch the news, the 8 o'clock news, and then whatever they say goes.
They used to, but now not so much.
It's changing.
Recently, since the last election, they're like, no, they're lying.
That's true. That's also true. That's been changing as well. But the thing is, after WhatsApp and everything, people, in a way, the source of information has been fragmented. Now you no longer pick up your information from a single place, but it's from a selection of things, and you get all of that, and you make sense out of that in your own way. So that's very healthy. But what you're saying is that once deepfakes come out, people are going to be scared because they no longer know what's going on, and they might go back to the centralized model of like few sources of information. And I believe that until we find out how to trust what we're seeing, we might go back to the more centralized model. I believe that makes a lot of sense.
I think it's kind of like a Pandora's box. You can't really put it back in a sense. Once this technology is out there, it's out there. There's not a way to completely put it back. You can try to contain it as much as you want, but once it's out there, it's out there. You'll never be able to completely trust everything ever again. At least it's my opinion. What do you think, Adriano?
Well, I think that's absolutely true. Once someone figures out how to do this, you can only assume that someone else is also going to be capable of replicating and doing the same, which is what we're seeing. We're seeing lots of different companies able of generating different kinds of deep fakes and for different purposes. Most of them are for entertainment, but they could potentially be used for ill intent. What I think is this regulation would cause more harm than help in this case. And the reason is that when you regulate and you try to enforce companies and developers and users to follow a regulation while you use this kind of technology, you're essentially forcing only the people that are willing to be following the guidelines, law-abiding citizens and companies. People who intend to use the technology with ill intent to cause damage, they have no interest in following the law. And they have the ability, nonetheless, to create the same level of fidelity of ultra-realistic videos and voice synthesis that any other actor would have, but with the advantage of not following the law. And then if you have to follow the law and now you have these constraints and this burden and this extra cost to develop the technology, then how do you combat it? it's kind of like trying to fight a fire with a smaller hose, and you're enforced to use a smaller hose because of regulation that says that you cannot throw too much water because water is scarce, or because we need to save water for some reason. We need to be able to use bigger hoses, hoses that can match the level of fire that we need to fight. And I think that regulation limits our ability of coming up with solutions to detect and combat this kind of problem.
Well, that's where the problem starts. That's where it starts getting political, because once we've got the scenario where, yeah, sure, we got to let everyone have the same tools so that everyone can fend for themselves. That makes sense. However, in general, a lot of people would feel safer. I guess this brings up the argument of whether or not you can have a gun. A lot of people feel safe. I would feel safe if no one could have a gun. But if they were to analyze it from that perspective, you're saying, they might think differently. So I think for deepfakes, people are going to feel safer if they feel like there's a law that blocks it, even though I don't think it will do much. But I think people are going to ask for it, much like people ask for the deep web to be shut down, because people do illegal things there, people sell drugs there, people traffic people there, or whatever it is that they say happens there. People say, oh, the police should go and shut it down. People want that because they would like to feel safe about it. And I think it's going to be a similar scenario.
Right. And the deep web is also an amazing tool against dictatorship and against censorship. And it's what allows us to get a better insight into countries such as China, because that's the only way that certain informations can leave that country, is through the deep web. So there are good uses of that technology as well as bad uses of that technology. And what happens today is that the FBI, the NSA, and all of those cyber threat departments in various different countries, they have developed techniques to combat that kind of crime activity in the deep web. And they've been somewhat successful, and they're improving their capacities all the time. So I think the same thing is going to happen with deepfakes in our ability to detect them. And also, if you're committing a crime, say you're trying to do electoral fraud, or if you're trying to steal money, there was this example that Thales mentioned, and I think he's probably talking about the same example that we mentioned during the introduction. Is saying, I just recall last deepfake was used to mimic a VP of a company branch to call the headquarters, asking a couple $1 million. And the one that I shared in the beginning was an energy company based out of the United Kingdom, received a call from the chief executive of the parent company asking him to transfer 220,000 euros to a Hungarian bank account. And they presumably used a deepfake to synthesize the voice of this executive officer of the parent company. And so what I'm trying to say is that there is a crime being committed there. The mode they used is irrelevant. I could have just as well called him and imitated the voice of the chief executive, just saying that I had a flu and that's why my voice was funny. And the person would believe all the same. It is creepy that someone can imitate your voice so perfectly that would convince you to wire 220,000 euros, and it's concerning. But reality is that there is an underlying crime that exists in the law and that can be prosecuted already. So creating something on top of that is only going to complicate for those who are making use of this technology for legal purposes.
Okay, so that actually I think it convinced me when it comes to that, because people are not going to become more prone to committing a crime just because of a new tool they can use, because whether they wanted to commit a crime or not is part of who they are in a sense. But one thing that I think will happen, because see, the deep web is something very interesting because it accomplishes amazing things. China and scenarios like that are part of it, and it allows people that some people truly believe that they should be able to be untraced, Some people are full out on that, and they're not committing crimes. They're just using the deep web because they don't want to be traced by anyone, by Google or anyone else. And that's fine, no problem there. It's a technology marvel in a sense for you to be able to go into it's the what I'm trying to say is that the deep web by itself is amazing. It is what it accomplishes. However, I feel like people marginalize it. Whenever people talk about it, oh, they've got porn there, they've got assassinations recorded there, they've got crimes committed there. They only see it, they marginalize it in a sense for what they know happens there. And it kind of makes them scared that there's a place where someone can do that and not get caught. And I think the deepfake slowly will take that place as more and more bad things happen. If they do, I believe people are going to start to put it in the same category, in the same drawer, in a sense.
Yeah, just something that came to my mind here. What do you think would be the reaction of people back in the early 1900s if someone came up with this idea that we should not buy or use cars because about 100 years from now, 1 million people are going to die out of auto accidents every year? You know, when you're just riding horses, you cannot understand the level of damage that a vehicle can cause. But as soon as you see one and you see how fast it can go and you see all of that metal and the potential, then it becomes visceral. You understand that, you know, it can't cause a lot of damage. And now you have all of those activists saying, no more cars, no more cars. And then is that real? We have those accidents. That's a real number. It's well over 1 million people die every year in the whole world due to auto accidents. If we focus on the accidents, if we focus on the misuse, and we try to legislate on that and take action on that, then we're losing on the other benefits. Cars have brought lots of improvements to the life of everybody in this world. It's only because of cars that people are saved, because you have ambulances that can come quickly and bring you to a hospital. It's only because of cars that now we can not have to live in the same neighborhood that you work. And now we have the ability to have societies that are more self-sustaining, that can grow faster, that can improve themselves. And are there accidents? Yes, there are accidents. Are there problems with this technology? Yes, there are. Cars are used for committing crimes, for getting away from police, for all sorts of bad things. But we don't see that as the main thing about cars. We see that as something good that helps us get around, makes our lives easier, and it's more of a necessity than anything else. So I wonder if that's the same case for deepfakes, that we're just looking into the obscure deep hole and not paying attention to the other good uses that deepfakes can bring to society, and assuming that perhaps we're going to be able to use this a lot more for the good than for evil. And if we start by regulating, then we're starting by assuming that it's going to be all evil, and we're going to limit people's ability of doing proper good use of this technology.
An example that I would like to see, I disagree with you, by the way, but kind of like GPS. So when GPS was released, it was created by the government, kind of like how the deep web Tor was also developed by the government. But GPS had a couple of limitations built in from the beginning to avoid it being used by terrorists or by anyone not authorized. So if you, I think it was in the 80s, you took a GPS and you put it on a rocket, as soon as it reached, I think it was over 300 miles an hour, it would shut off. That was to avoid being put on missiles. I don't know if that's possible, given our technology right now, to create something like that. But I think ideally that would be our best case, where we could, in the base layers of technology, set up safeguards to avoid misuse. So if our frameworks that we commonly use have things like, if you take a printer and try to put $1 in there, it won't print that. It'll come out black. That's a safeguard that was put into the printer Of course, you can go around it. You can, but it's a whole lot harder, you know? So
I get it.
in
But
that
then
sense,
if we go back to cars, right? We say, okay, lots of horrible auto accidents. We should try to mitigate that. And then we, create laws around traffic. We create airbags. We create seatbelts, and people are still dying. And we try all those things, and people are still dying. And then someone comes and say, hey, let's just limit the speed of all vehicles to 60 miles per hour. Nobody can go any faster than that, ever. What's going to happen the next day?
I don't think there are rules you can apply general. Like car rules, you said we have different speed limits. Imagine, and now if we don't have any speed limits, anyone can go any velocity that they want whenever they want.
That's already true. You can go any velocity.
There are speed limits. There are speed limits. If you go past a speed limit and an officer is there or a camera is there, you will be fined. You will face consequences.
Or you could go to jail. But what I'm saying is that
go to jail.
You can decide right now to grab your car and go 120 miles per hour anywhere you want. And whether you're going to die or not, it just depends on how good a driver you are and where you're driving. But what I'm saying is that you can do that.
I'll face consequences.
Yes, there are consequences, but you can do that. And what I'm saying is that let's say that now we figure this law, no car can go over 60 miles per hour. The next thing that's going to happen is that, people who buy Ferraris, they're going to figure out a way to unlock the transmission, unlock the engine, and go over 60 miles per hour. Now it's a matter of, okay, will I get caught driving over 60 miles per hour? That's the same thing of getting caught going over the speed limit. So the problem with trying to limit the technology is that the next day someone is going to come with something to break the limitation.
Yeah, I guess it's going to be pretty hard. Like it would be hard to go past the GPS one, the printer one. It would take significant effort to do that. That would deter like general people, like because I can see this being used by like a teenager to bully someone else. Or being used like in some kind of petty neighbor war. Like I'm mad at my neighbor. I'm gonna make a deep fake of him. That's gonna embarrass him. We can have safe points in there to avoid those kinds of situations because the person's not gonna be like, oh, I have to unlock this and then do that and all that to actually do what I want, But a criminal, he's not gonna have any problem doing that.
Right. Here's the only way that I can think of that happening. And Igor, you can express your opinion here as well, because you're also an expert in this. But the only way that I can see of the government succeeding in limiting this would be limiting the processing power that you have access to. So you would be able to buy a GPU, but you cannot buy a GPU with certain capacity, because beyond that capacity, you would be able to train a neural network that would be able to deceive humans. And now you're limiting people, assuming that everybody wants to deceive everyone else, and that's the reason why they're buying that technology. And what turns out that you're going to be limited in what you can create that is not fake.
What about limiting by like a framework? I get what you're saying, but like OpenAI is doing. I don't agree with how they're doing it. Well, something similar, like the people who create these kinds of technologies put in safeguards in there in the code, not in the processing, in the code. Would you be against that?
Do you want to get that one, Igor?
Yeah, I think the thing about OpenAI, it's a different thing. But talking about what Adriano said, limitation of the power of GPU or something like technologies, it's terrible for science or for the development of these things. Like I said, we don't only have a deepfake as an application of such technologies. We have a lot of more pros than they counts. So I think that's not an option.
So when it comes to like limiting a framework, everybody can write a framework. So that would just slow down people's ability to have access to that technology. So,
I mean, like if the person wants to set out, study, get a 4-year degree, and then head out to a master's, then a PhD, I'm not sure there's much we can do in relation to like anything. If a person wants to do that and become a chemical engineer and create this massive bomb, he can go out, get his degree, and do it. But that takes time, that takes effort. That will avoid me, a regular person, from going out and creating that bomb, That's basically what I'm just pointing at.
So what do you guys think are the possible strategies to counter deepfake or at least to minimize the damage now.
Well, my impression is that at this point, it's not really clear how and where it's going to be used. We're making a lot of assumptions, and it's kind of like crying out that cars are going to kill millions of people every year when we're just being introduced to that technology. And at that point, you're envisioning airbags and seat belts and traffic laws and all of those things. It's just impossible. You're not ready for that. You have
Yeah,
to
I think they'll come in just like cars, like seatbelts and all that kind of stuff came later. I think this kind of stuff will come in later, if possible, because of the complexity. Like with the GPS and the printer, you already knew right away what people are going to do with it. Like you know that the person's going to put that on a rocket, or someone was going to print money. You can't exactly do that with AI right now. But let's say we're talking about a convolutional neural network that tries to identify things. If we get to a point where we can create intelligent algorithms where it can detect when it's being used for something nefarious or something that shouldn't be allowed, it'll like halt itself. It'll like, hey, I know what you're doing. I'm not going to do it.
I think. Oh,
go ahead.
I think that's where it becomes almost impossible, because whether you're doing it for something bad can depend on something as simple as whether or not the original person knows about it. The PC could never know that. Additionally, a lot of these projects are open source. All it takes is downloading the code and removing a check there, and it'll run normally.
I get that, and I was going to mention, like, the deterrent for GPT-3 is the $4 million that it costs to train. So even if OpenAI released the code for GPT-3, nobody, like, I don't have $3 million to train it. I'm pretty sure most people don't. So that'll be the bigger deterrent right now, is processing power. In the future, where everyone has a DGX at home and that's not a deterrent, then I think we'll have newer issues to deal with. We're just moving the goalpost down the line, in a sense.
Now, GPT-3 was trained using V100s, so A100s are presumably at least 10 times faster for the most part. So it's already $400,000. And that figure of 4 million, I'm not sure if that's for the whole training, including the hyperparameter search, or if it's just to train a single version of the model. And by the way, if they open source, then what I'm assuming is that they're also open sourcing the model with the weights, which means that I don't really need to train. All I need to do is infer. And if I want to transfer learn, if I want to fine tune, then I would have to incur the cost of retraining. But then again, because you already have the hyperparameters, you already have a working model, there is very little tuning that you need to do to the hyperparameters. So the training would be a lot faster, a lot easier. So I really think that trying to limit the technology is kind of like trying to limit the speed in vehicles. It turns out that people are going to figure out a way to turn off that limitation, and you're back to signposts stating what's the speed limit for that road. And then you're back again at having police out there trying to stop someone that's going over the speed limit. It's not like,
it's forever a game of cat and mouse.
Right.
It'll forever be like that, I guess, in a sense, if we pursue that kind of route. I just think it's a better alternative to just the Wild West kind of approach, where no laws, no regulations, anyone can do whatever they want, and then we just deal with things after the fact. I don't know. Just different opinions.
The example about the car, let's say, for example, the car has a speed limit, like trucks have that oftentimes, and then you really want to get that. Actually, here in Brazil, video players are not allowed to. You're not allowed, if you have a video player on your dashboard, it's not allowed to play any video if you're driving. It does that. So you'd have to pay an expensive modification on it for that to work. The block, it makes way more sense, because you have to be willing to mess up with your car, do an illegal modification that could potentially harm your vehicle, costs money. Even though it's not 100% foolproof, it stops a lot of people from watching stuff while driving. But for technology, that it doesn't. It's not as you're not risking anything. You just change the code oftentimes. So I really think it's just almost impossible, if anything. I think I agree with you guys that a lot of the blocking happens because training is so expensive. Understanding also, let's say if you want to make a specialized model, you might need an expertise to pick the proper one, adjust the training parameters and everything. So that just like producing drugs, anyone could technically acquire the resources, and if you're a really good chemist, you can go supposedly and make the drugs yourself. Just the government just makes it really hard to get the precursors, the stuff you need to make it. So I think it comes down to not having a real solution. You just try to make it as hard as you can without stopping evolution of other people.
Right. So guys, I really enjoyed the discussion. We're 5 minutes past the hour. We have just one last comment from Camila. She asked if there is a way that deepfake can be used by police to avoid crimes. And the answer to that is yes. You can use deepfakes in various cases. First of all, if we're talking just about deep learning, we can use that for face recognition. We can use that for voice recognition. You can use that in many different ways to detect patterns of transactions, detect patterns of behavior that would indicate a crime is in progress or a crime is about to happen. Now we're getting to the minority report mention that Thales made. And then when it comes to deep fakes, I think it would be kind of like an undercover action that the police can often do. So they pretend to be someone, get infiltrated, and then extract some information, extract confirmation of crimes being committed, and then they come and prosecute the person, arrest, and you have the crime avoided, mitigated, or a crime resolved. So I think it is possible, and there are many different good uses of deep fakes. It's just a matter of us learning how to make good use of that technology and learn how to live in a world where people could make bad uses of these technology. So thank you again for watching. Thank you guys. I really appreciated the discussion and the arguments that you guys put forward. And I look forward to the next live next Thursday at 1 p.m. Thank you very much. See you guys.
Well,
Thank you. Bye.